You've probably been in a room with one of them without knowing it. Not because they hid anything, not because they were being deliberately mysterious, but because nothing about them pointed in any particular financial direction. The car was ordinary. The clothes were fine but unremarkable. They didn't mention investments, didn't reference properties, didn't signal anything. The conversation was easy, and then you found out, weeks later, from someone else in passing, that the person you'd been talking to had a net worth most people in that room would not believe. This happens more often than most people realize. Thomas Stanley and William Danko spent 2 decades studying American millionaires. Not the ones in magazines, not the ones on television, but the ones who had actually accumulated real, measurable wealth. What they found was disorienting. Many people who live in expensive homes and drive luxury cars do not actually have much wealth. Many people who have a great deal of wealth do not even live in upscale neighborhoods. The signals most people use to identify wealth are almost entirely wrong. And the real ones, the behavioral patterns that actually indicate someone has built something durable, are almost entirely invisible unless you know what you're looking for. Here are 8 of them. Sign 1. They don't get uncomfortable when money comes up. They just redirect it. There's a difference between avoiding money conversations because the topic is awkward and deflecting them because the validation isn't needed. Quietly wealthy people fall into the second category. When someone asks what they paid for something, they answer briefly and move on. When a conversation turns toward income comparisons or net worth signals, they don't get defensive. They simply don't engage with the game, not because they're hiding anything, because the scoreboard they're tracking isn't the one being discussed. Real millionaires don't show off their wealth. Instead of spending money to appear wealthy, they save to build real wealth. The person who needs you to know their number is still using external feedback to feel secure about it. The person who genuinely doesn't need you to know has already internalized the score. That difference in behavior is quiet but unmistakable once you've seen it. Sign 2. Their largest recurring financial commitment is completely invisible. You can often reconstruct someone's financial priorities by looking at what they spend on. The person spending heavily on visible things, cars, restaurants, clothing, travel that photographs well, is allocating toward appearance. The person whose largest recurring commitment is automatic and invisible is allocating toward something else entirely. Over 127,000 retail investors became millionaires in 2025 through Vanguard accounts alone, with hundreds reaching that milestone every day. The majority reached it in their 50s through consistent, automated contributions, not through dramatic investment decisions. The quietly wealthy person's most significant monthly financial event is a transfer you'd never see. It leaves their account before they think about spending. It goes somewhere it will compound undisturbed. And because it's automated, it requires no discipline to maintain. It just runs. Nobody posts about automated index fund contributions. That's the point. Sign 3. They become more conservative about spending as their income rises, not less. Most people experience rising income as permission. The raise arrives, and within months, the apartment is bigger. The car is newer. The standard of everything has quietly recalibrated upward. The lifestyle expansion feels like natural progression. It is, in fact, the primary mechanism by which wealth fails to accumulate even in high-earning lives. Wealth is built through margin, the gap between what you earn and what you spend. Stanley found that as income rises, those who actually build wealth protect the margin deliberately rather than letting lifestyle expansion close it automatically. The quietly wealthy person does the opposite of what's expected. When earnings increase, more goes to allocation. The lifestyle doesn't expand to match the income. The gap between income and lifestyle widens. This is counterintuitive from the outside, It looks like restraint. It is actually the engine. Sign 4. They've said no to something that looked impressive from the outside. At some point, there was an opportunity. A house that would have stretched the budget into territory that felt slightly dangerous. A car that would have required a payment that didn't fit the system. A social or professional commitment that carried status but consumed resources disproportionate to its actual value. They said no. Not with drama. Not with a visible financial philosophy speech. Just no. And they moved on, and nobody fully understood why. The Millionaire Next Door found that wealthy accumulators value financial independence over displaying high social status. This isn't deprivation. It's a deliberate prioritization that most people in their social circles never fully understand. The decisions that look like missed opportunities from the outside are often the ones that protected the system. And the system is the whole thing. Sign 5. Market volatility genuinely doesn't affect their mood. This one is harder to fake than it looks. When markets drop significantly, there are two types of people. The first type feels the decline as a personal threat, something that must be responded to, monitored, discussed, perhaps acted upon. Their investment portfolio is connected to their immediate financial survival in a way that makes every correction feel dangerous. The second type watches the same decline with something closer to indifference, not because they don't care about their investments, but because they don't need those investments to perform on a short timeline. The monthly expenses are covered. The emergency fund is intact. The allocation is long-term by design. A 20% decline is noise in a 30-year compounding timeline. PAWs, prodigious accumulators of wealth, have at least 4 times the wealth of UAWs at similar income levels. The behavioral difference is that PAWs invest for the long term without interrupting the process during downturns, while UAWs make emotional decisions that convert temporary paper losses into permanent, realized ones. The person who is genuinely unbothered during a market correction isn't performing calm. They just don't need the money right now. That structural fact changes everything about how the number on the screen feels. Sign 6. Their financial decisions were already made. There's a version of wealth building that requires constant active decision-making. Every month, evaluating what to save, what to invest, how much, in what. This version is exhausting and fragile. It depends on motivation remaining high and circumstances remaining stable, which they never reliably do. The quietly wealthy person made most of their financial decisions once, deliberately, and then stopped making them. The allocation is set. The automation is running. The contribution amount was chosen when thinking was clear, not in the moment when competing demands make the wrong choice feel reasonable. Naval Ravikant, who has written extensively about wealth and decision-making, captured the principle directly. The goal is to make your money work while you sleep. The person still making daily financial decisions is still working. The person whose system is running is compounding. The quietly wealthy have very few financial decisions left to make. That's not passivity. That's the end state of good design. Sign 7. They know their exact net worth, but you'd never know they do. Not approximately, not a rough sense. They know it. Most people have a vague feeling about their financial position, some awareness of what's in the accounts, a general sense of whether things are moving in the right direction. The quietly wealthy person tracks the real number with more precision than they track almost anything else in their life. They just don't mention it. Those who quietly build net worth manage expenses carefully, maintain a high savings rate even as income rises, and track their progress with discipline. They simply don't perform this tracking publicly. The knowledge is private by design, not because the number is something to hide, but because sharing it serves no purpose that matters to them. The scoreboard is accurate, they just choose who gets to see it. Sign 8. They measure their financial progress in options gained, not things acquired. This is the one that ties everything else together. At some point in the wealth-building process, a fundamental shift happens in how a person thinks about money. It stops being a measure of what they can acquire and starts being a measure of what they can decline. The freedom to say no to a job that doesn't work. The ability to wait for something better instead of taking whatever is available right now. The option to pause, to change direction, to absorb a disruption without it becoming a crisis. Wealthy accumulators prioritize financial independence over displaying high social status. Their wealth manifests not in visible consumption, but in options. Choices that simply don't exist for people with equivalent income and much lower net worth. The quietly wealthy person's most important asset isn't visible. It's the space between what their life costs and what they earn. It's the years of uninterrupted compounding. It's the emergency fund that converts crises into inconveniences. It's the portfolio that doesn't need to perform right now. None of that shows up in the car. None of it shows up in the watch. None of it announces itself in conversation, but it's there. Quietly, reliably, compounding in the background. That's what it actually looks like.